here, and then I can kick it off in like a handful of seconds here. I'll get a drink of water before we start, and then I think, yeah, I'll just I'll intro it. Kyle, have you intro yourself, and then we'll kind of just jump into it.
Sounds good.
See you guys on the other side.
Bye, Alex. It was great.
Oh, I have to hide you? Can you hide yourself? I don't know. You're hiding.
Alex, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm hiding on. I'm hiding on my screen.
I don't want to see your moving face. I don't want to see your still face. Just none of your face.
I don't want to hear your voice. A click. If you chat me, Alex.
Just gonna cry for the next 20 to 30 minutes. I'll talk to you guys at the other side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 Questions with today, Kyle Vamvouris. Start over. I got your name wrong already. Keep this in. Never mind. I don't know what's going on. It's the post-lunch slump that I'm hitting right now. Kyle, you're on the West Coast, right, though? So this is like post-breakfast for you?
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I mean, I had breakfast very early this morning. Should we talk about our eating schedules first, you think?
Yeah, we should talk about our eating schedule. I had pasta for lunch today. What did you have for breakfast?
I'm a big snack guy. I love them.
Okay. This is Kyle Vamvouris, not Kyle Vamvouris. He runs Vamvouris, but Kyle Vamvouris. We actually connected, a couple of weeks ago now. I posted something on Sales Hacker. He found it, thought it was insightful, very flattered, and then went ahead and created a video, and we connected and had an unrecorded conversation, and we talked about some really cool stuff, and I figured, why don't we record something? So here he is. We're going to ask him 5 questions. Kyle, before I jump into that, it's not part of the 5 questions, but tell me about you. Who is Kyle Vamvouris?
So I am just a man on a journey, a wild mission. You know, when I was a young boy, about 7 months, no, none of this is true. So basically, I'm just I run a sales training company that specifically focuses on sales development, and I wrote a book called Cold to Committed. It's a guide on how to become a top performing sales development rep. Today, I focus a lot on helping earlier stage startup companies build, scale, and train their sales development teams. Before that, I was running sales development teams, inside sales teams. I was in a direct closing role earlier in my career, and I actually started as an SDR. So I went through what was, I consider, a fantastic training program at the company I first started as an SDR at. And then what I realized is that wasn't the truth for everybody. Not all SDRs have a very good first experience. And that's what sort of led me on this journey, is I really wanted to help as many SDRs as possible become successful, because the worst phrase, in my opinion, is sales isn't for me. So a big core of my mission is, how do I impact and help as many SDRs as possible?
That's awesome. Yeah, I love seeing people who, similar to myself, not in the sales space, but starting out as an SDR, building up those skills, and then making the progression to something like, in my case, a marketing role, in your case, sales training, and building on that foundation that you get during that training program. But like you said, not a lot of people have that. So very noble of you to try and give back and give everyone the opportunity to, get those resources early on and then see where their career can take them. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I'm incredibly passionate about it. When I started it, there wasn't a lot of content for SDRs, and now there's a ton, almost overload. So I think it's great.
Almost, just because this is content geared for SDRs. So not too much yet. We're contributing, but we're not over the top.
Yeah. Well, wait until question 5. I think that might be overload.
Speaking of question 5, I'm going to kick it off with question 1. I mentioned it earlier. We connected via a Sales Hacker post. And one of the points that I made in that post was about SDRs needing to create a personal brand for themselves. It sounded like in the video that you created, you do agree with that. I'd love to dig a bit deeper and really find out how valuable you think that is, and if creating a brand is almost becoming a necessity for success in the SDR role.
Yeah, so I loved that post, because I think you're 100% right. Personal brand is very important for sales, for any role, really. I have a little bit of a nuanced opinion about the intention behind the personal brand. And what I see a lot is SDRs, salespeople, creating a lot of content and developing a personal brand within the sales or SDR world. So if they're an SDR at a company that sells marketing automation tools, they're still creating content and building a brand within the SDR world. And that's, in my opinion, a mistake. We could talk a lot about why that is, but at a high level, it's my opinion that your personal brand should represent the industry that you serve, because how good is an audience? How good is a personal brand, which, by the way, is just a digital version of reputation? How good is all of that if you're only leveraging it to get jobs? It's like, okay, great, we'll be able to get another job. But I would rather be able to leverage that to build stronger relationships with potential customers, which long term will be how you really get the fruit of a personal or professional brand.
For sure. Yeah, I think the big point that you hit on there is the idea of this brand that you're building online is something that you build to help increase credibility, authority, sort of your expertise in the space. But it's the space that's really important about that. If I were selling into HR, for example, and I was establishing myself as an SDR expert, then like if I reach out to a director of HR, they'd be like, great, thanks for letting me know that you know all this stuff about sales development, but what about me? My challenges, how can you help me solve those? That's like the crux of, in my opinion, sales development, is selling the challenge, really helping someone understand that I can get you from where you are now to a better place with my product. But if I don't establish that credibility in their space, no one's going to believe me.
Yeah, 100% right. And I think authority is one of the biggest levers you have to pull to get meetings. And that's regardless of medium, but I think best illustrated on a cold call. Cold calls that typically do better are ones where the person who's cold calling has a lot of authority in the conversation. I always use the example of if Mark Cuban was cold calling and the person he called had never heard his voice or knew who he was, he would still do really well on the cold call because he speaks with a level of authority, and assuming he's speaking about a topic he understands, that authority, that credibility will translate. So anything you can do to solidify that authority, I think, is really important. And unfortunately, a lot of people are spending so much time focused on the role that they're in today and not enough time on the industry that they serve, when all of the top earning salespeople I've ever met have 20 years in software sales selling to a specific industry. And those are the ones who are making $1 million commission checks.
Yeah, they know it like the back of their hand. Like,
exactly.
They've been doing this for decades. So it's only natural that they've got sort of that air of authority, confidence when speaking to someone. Whereas, yeah, you get a new SDR who's maybe 3 months on the job, they could know everything about your product and a good amount about the space, but you're still going to hear in their voice that like bit of doubt or uncertainty, something that's lacking with obviously someone who's 20 years seasoned in the space. That's a huge difference.
Of course, but the goal today, the goal today should be to get yourself or put yourself on the path to be that person in 20 years.
Right.
As opposed to just, I'm an SDR person, now I'm a salesperson because I'm a salesperson. It's always like me, 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 me. Well, what about the industry? And like I said, that has the best ROI because, at least in my experience, whenever I talk to a multimillionaire who made it all selling high ticket software, it's all one industry over a long period of time.
Nice. Yeah, it's great advice. Kind of segues nicely into question 2 in regards to creating that personal brand. A lot of reps think that, and I think it's true, is that you need to produce content to show that you have that credibility. You go on LinkedIn and you post about, if we are moving in that industry specific track that you're talking about, you know, you're posting articles or sharing articles about someone in my example, the HR industry, and how you can establish that authority and credibility in the space. But that means that you have to create content. So I'd love to get your thoughts on SDRs, creating content, using content, best practices around that. Cause I know we had a pretty heated discussion last time, you could say.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the things that especially when it comes to personal or professional brand, that I think about a lot is the onus on the individual to create content. That content that they're creating benefits them. Mm-hmm. So if you're creating a personal brand or a professional brand and your company gives you an hour a day just to focus on that, that's a really cool company. Because in my opinion, you should be taking the time. It's your personal brand. That's what carries with you from company to company. So You should be writing your posts on Sunday, Saturday, maybe afternoons. That this is part of building the foundation of your career. Take advantage of the extra time you have.
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people, personally, I see get kind of pulled into the LinkedIn trap where they see reps like themselves producing a ton of content, posting every day, sharing articles, the whole shebang. And you think you're behind, so you ramp up your own activity. But that also means that you're kind of dipping into the resource pool that you have time-wise and taking stuff away from making calls, sending emails, things like that. If a company gives you that hour a day to do it, you have to take it. But like otherwise, I think I would agree with you. Find your own time to create this, because otherwise you are going to technically, in my opinion, fall behind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. I can use myself as an example. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. I post 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times a day. And the vast majority of those posts, full disclosure, I wrote on Sunday. I take 4 hours on Sunday and I just write social posts for the entire week. That way, throughout my week, when I'm in back-to-back meetings, when I'm doing a sales call or running an SDR training, whatever it is, I'm not like having anxiety about my LinkedIn posts. And then occasionally I'll think of something, that I want to try and I'll just send it out. But the vast majority of it's all automated. And that's what everybody should be doing because it benefits you as a brand.
Right. Corollary question number 2. I just saw this idea the other day and I started using Notion. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
yeah, of course. I love it.
It's the idea of building a well where it's something you can dip into every time you want to post something, but you're not sure what you want to get out there into the world. So I've started doing it where every time I have an idea, but I don't want to take time away from doing the activity that I'm kind of executing, I quickly go in there, I write down the idea that I have, and then I come back to it later in the day and try and flesh it out more so that I have this growing list of things to post if I'm ever dry or if I don't have something to say that day. Do you follow a similar process? Do you like a notebook that you use for all that stuff?
Yeah, so I use I have a task manager, and I just throw them all in there as like eventual posts and whatnot. If I have a notebook that I'll write down little ideas. One of the things that we suggest at a macro level, and this is typically for companies that have SDRs, where a focus of theirs is having a presence on LinkedIn. This idea of leveraging personal brand to propel corporate brand. One day we can talk about that. It's pretty deep, but the high level macro view is you have 5 SDRs all writing content for a specific industry. That's great. They all need to create that content. Maybe you're helping them create that content. Either way, that's a lot of people. And once you've created unique content across those 5 different people, at a certain point, you can start recycling, assuming it's not timely. You can start recycling every 6 months, and then the content barrier becomes a lot lower.
Yeah, I think that kind of leans into the idea that I mentioned of running a team of mini marketers, sort of like having those people that you're using to test your own messaging as a marketing team, letting them test messaging as a sales rep, and kind of putting that out there in the world, seeing what sticks, and then recycling that. That's a great idea. You can sort of repurpose and reuse stuff instead of starting over from scratch. That's a great way to create content without having to put in so much effort into the creation process.
Right. And if you're an SDR and you're on a team of 4 people, you guys can literally all meet up and say, hey, if assuming there's not a lot of overlap between your connections, you can literally each one of you writes one post and you all share it and you use it as your own post one day of a week. And then each rep is now only creating 1 post or 2 posts. And that actually scales across all reps depending on overlap.
Yeah. And that gives them more time to make calls.
Exactly.
That leads into question 3. One of the things I mentioned in my Sales Hacker post where we found each other was sort of a movement away from the predictable revenue model. I didn't explain myself very well. You mentioned that you disagreed. And I think what I was trying to say is that metrics aren't like high levels of metrics aren't necessarily the sole predictor of success anymore. We'd love to get your take on that and then attempt to defend myself.
Well, no, I think, it was like really a small part of your thing, but I was just clarifying because I actually think the model still totally exists. Today, in my opinion, the best predictor of sales success or pipeline success is still top level activity metrics from the sales development team. It's not perfect, and there's nuance to all of this. And especially if you're trying to figure it out for your company. Actually, it's funny, my business partner and I are we were just talking about this the other day, but when you're doing an analysis of where your leads come from, for example, you would never just figure out like, oh, what revenue came from inbound and divide that by the number of inbound leads you have, because you're missing out on all the different channels, right? It makes no sense. You would always break it down by channel. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance involved with outbound prospecting in the modern age. There's a ton of nuance. You have to account for all of that nuance, but assuming you have it broken down, you know the outbound cold calls and the effectiveness of them, and you know the outbound emails and the effectiveness of them, you can then do a real analysis and predict with relative certainty, and there's a lot of nuance there too, but you can relatively predict what the sales outcomes are going to be. And as a leader, you should be watching these percentages, and when one goes wonky, whoa, why did our meeting to SQL rate drop by 40%? And then you can focus on the higher level activities. Goes, oh, they were calling this weird lead list we were trying, and it was abysmal. You can start to figure things out.
Yeah. I think context wise, I now agree with you more than before, because my idea was that you do focus a lot on the nuances and things like this, but not a lot, unfortunately, not a lot of companies have sort of that well-oiled, like fully realized, I can predict based on metrics sales development function. So a lot of teams do sort of work off of their gut and intuition and try stuff out, like you were saying, see metrics get all wonky and then try and revert back, but then like everything gets messed up. So I would agree with you that like predictable revenue in that sense is very important. I just think that in the future, we're going to see a lot less of you have to hit 80 dials to get these many meetings, to get this many like closed deals, solely because the way that we go about prospecting is going to be different. And it'll go from 80 to 40 higher quality messaging, or
Sure.
80 calls to 20 LinkedIn touches. Like those metrics are where they're going to change, but the concept I think will still be similar.
Right. And it's possible. I mean, there's one of the things I think a lot about is when all advice, it's very hard to be general. There's nuance to everything. So if you're a highly transactional sale, if you're selling into the SMB, that's a lot easier to predict than if you're selling to enterprise.
Right.
So you use different metrics and you have to look at things a little bit differently. One of my concerns is, and it's, I think probably the crux of your argument here, is there's a lot of what I call spreadsheet management, where you just look at the numbers. You're like, if we doubled everyone's calls, then we're going to double the output. Let's double everyone's calls. And it doesn't work that way. Yeah, exactly. Like one of the things I preach to managers is, if you have a rep that is beating everybody on the leaderboard and doing less activities, so their conversion rate is just higher, a lazy manager will go to that rep and say, hey, I need you to get your activity levels to where everyone else is. No, in their mind, they're thinking, oh, it'll also increase by 30% their output. Doesn't always work that way. And most of the time it doesn't. People, if they're hitting their number and they're successful and they're the number one on the team, why don't we, instead of trying to change their process, why don't we analyze it, see what's working well, and see if we can replicate it for the rest of the team? If not, if they're just magic, then why would we touch magic?
Oh, I wouldn't touch magic. I mean, if it's working,
No.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. Like,
exactly. Look what happened to Voldemort.
Yeah, stay away from that guy. Are you kidding me? He doesn't have a nose. No thanks.
Yeah, creepy.
Cool. Okay, I think that I'm on your side now. I agree, and I think that I actually talked to Jeremy Levier about this recently, because he was in a boat in the past, upcoming on SDRs. Everyone be on the lookout. Small plug, but he was in a sales role where he was only making calls. He learned how to cold call before sending emails, was trialing emails, did some different stuff, started using LinkedIn, and did exactly what you're talking about. His numbers went down, but his meetings went way up. Mm-hmm. And his manager was like, you can't do this. You have to get your numbers up. So he left. I think that if you have the luxury of being able to leave a job and sort of pursue a company that buys in more to that idea of working smarter instead of just trying to level set on metrics, like by all means, that should be something you should go for. But there's also like reasoning behind those metrics in the first place. So like you guys have to meet somewhere in the middle. I think that's a lot of people are like on one end of the spectrum. It's more of the managers have the numbers for a reason. You're hitting your numbers, meet somewhere in the middle, come to a happy agreement if you can.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things, like what that tells me, that story, is that manager probably doesn't do a very good job managing up. Because if I have a rep on a team and that rep is outperforming everybody and doing less activities, I'm not worried about my boss pointing at that rep's activity levels, because I'm just going to tell them that's our top performer.
Yeah, they're doing all right.
Right. So leave her alone, or whatever. Like, what are we talking about? Why don't we look at the people who we can help improve and create a strategy for improving our team holistically instead of hammering down on our top performer?
Yeah, love it. All right, let's jump into question 4. One of the things that we touched on in our unrecorded conversation was the background that you had before going into sales. Specifically, and you shared a great article with me about using improv comedy as a way to build up skills for the sales development role. Give us some, I guess, other skills that you can use to develop the SDR role, like improv comedy, things that you would be able to do outside of work to help develop the skills you need. And tell us about your career in stand-up comedy, because I'm very interested in hearing about this.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't call it a career. I think I made a grand total of $70 doing stand-up.
That is $70 more than I will probably ever make doing stand-up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably a lot of people don't make anything. But so I think some of the other skills that are helpful, or things you can do, extracurricular activities, so to speak. One is probably recommended all the time, which is Toastmasters. I've been a part of Toastmasters for a very long time, on and off. I did my first Toastmasters. My dad took me to one when I was 9. So I've been around it for a long time. Being able to articulate clearly and combining that with practiced speaking on the fly, that improv, you mix those two together. And in Toastmasters, they do this. It's called table topics. They give you a topic. You're supposed to speak about it for 2-3 minutes, whatever the time is. And being able to mix those two, where it's like, I'm very good on the fly, but I'm also calm and articulate. It's a very powerful combination. So Toastmasters is one I would highly recommend. I would even recommend learning how, this is also classic, but copywriting, but specifically what I find, I'm surprised by the lack of knowledge about the internet marketing space, not just from SDRs, but even marketers too. Like I know a ton of internet marketers, not personally, but just I have knowledge of them. I understand their offerings. I know what they sell. I know how they sell. I know their ads. Watching ads from internet marketers is pretty spectacular. And I try, like, my ads are now just fine-tuned. I won't shut off an ad for anything because I want to see them, and they're all fine-tuned. It's all people trying to sell me a course or something. But what it can teach you is how to capture attention. And in a world where you're competing for attention on the phone, especially through email, especially through LinkedIn, you're always competing for attention. You should get very good at grabbing attention. So you can learn from those, from internet marketers. There's copywriting you can do, but anything you can do to understand how to write in a way that grabs attention. And then when you have that attention, how can you keep it and then capitalize on it? That's a very important skill set that is learnable, believe it or not.
Yeah. You aren't just like, I mean, some people are definitely kind of born with not the skill itself, but it's a bit easier for them to develop, but it is definitely learnable. I'm actually trying out some copywriting micro courses myself. I don't want to brag, but I think I'm getting all right now.
Whose are you taking?
Very good copy, Eddie over at G2 Crowd. He small plug for verygoodcopy.com. It's very good. He does a bunch of micro articles every week, and then has a new course that he's developed. So I'm going to hit the ground running on that. But there's so much out there that you can learn from reading, copybooks, looking at advertising, like you said, to help develop those skills on the email side of things. But then also you have to think like on the phone, improv, Toastmasters, like those things marry themselves very well in the SDR role in terms of like what you were saying, being articulate, being able to think on the fly, and then capturing attention. Like those are 3 things that you have to do as an SDR daily. So I would recommend that anybody do those 3 things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, all my kids, I have 2 kids now. I say all my kids as if I have 30, but I have 2 now. Yeah. You know me. Yeah, I have 2 kids and I'll probably have more, full disclosure, but they will all do improv. They will all do, copywriting stuff. And I was fortunate. My dad and I, we had an interesting relationship. So him and I never went to any sports games, anything fun like that. We went to seminars. And my dad was a business owner. He's a very successful guy. And he was really passionate about continuous education. So he was always paying to go to seminars, and he would just sneak me in. And it's pretty easy to sneak in a kid because what are they going to charge me? And what am I going to do with the information? So I was fortunate because I kind of grew up in this world of like, grab attention. How do you articulate the value of something? What do people care about? And there's this whole world of information out there that not a lot of people see. But if you were to open your eyes and you'd study it, there's a lot of takeaways that apply to the SDR world, the sales world in general. And I think it'd be really helpful for a lot of people.
Nice. Love it. I'm going to finish it off with more of an open-ended, we didn't talk about this question kind of question, but I want to ask everyone who hops on 5 questions with Demand Drive, looking for you next. Listener, you could be on the show. The world of sales development, the role itself has changed pretty dramatically over the past like 5-10 years. Even when I started as an SDR in 2013, which seems like ages ago, I didn't have nearly as many resources, access to tools that we have now. It's a totally different profession. Let's take a look at the future and look to the next 5 years. What do you think sales development is going to look like in 2025?
So it's a hard one. My feeling is not going to change too much. There's going to be tools and things are going to become more efficient. Absolutely. But I still believe in the next 5 years, the top performing sales development reps are going to be the ones who love the process. Maybe they don't love the cold calling, cold outreach. Maybe they don't love that, but they love the process of figuring out how to get somebody's attention and then use that attention to build interest and then leverage that interest to get a sale. If you can become very addicted to that process and you're incredibly hardworking, in my opinion, 5 years from now, those are still going to be the most successful SDRs. Will the workflow change? Probably. It will probably change a little bit. I don't know how. I would imagine more direct dials. I feel like for B2B, we'll be calling cell phones a lot more than we are today.
Already seeing some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, you already are. Exactly. So I would imagine because you're going to be calling people cell phones, you better be a little sharper. You better be quick. Email is getting messy over the next, we're just watching email rates crash. Probably the biggest change will be how companies as a whole, leverage their SDR and sales team to build brand, which companies aren't doing very well today. There's a couple, honorable mentions there. But I think in 5 years, we're going to figure out that we can leverage employee brand to propel company brand in a way that we haven't thought to do before. And in 5 years, I think so.
Yeah, kind of circling back to question 1 in this conversation.
I'm always circling everything back. I track the conversation. I use next level intelligence to do callbacks and references. And at the end, we have a nice packaged product.
Nice. I think it's well packaged. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you hopping on and chatting with me. If people want to learn more about you, get to know you and your organization, what can they do? Where can they find you? I know you have a text me call to action on your LinkedIn. Talk about that too.
Oh yeah. So I have, I have a ton of ways to get a hold of me. Spooky. So yeah, so obviously you can find me on LinkedIn. The website's voris.com. My text community is really cool. And it's funny that you bring it up because it's new. And what it is, it's a phone number that you text. Okay. We're already on the right foot.
I'm already,
And
I'm over my head. I don't know.
you're like, whoa, wait, what? It's a text thing. So what I do is I just interact with SDRs there. It's not like a weird marketing. Like occasionally if I go live, I'll tell them, but most times I don't even do anything. SDRs just go and they'll reach out to me and they'll ask a prospecting question like, hey, how do I get a hold of this type of person? Something like that. And I answer it. If you want, you can do it. It's 415-991-4240. Remember the number. Don't know my wife's, but we'll work on it.
Oh yeah, definitely text Kyle. I know you post some of the stuff on LinkedIn about the conversations that you're having, and yeah, it is just that. Like people have questions, you can help them, so you answer, and that's that. Like you're just a resource for people, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and I think look, a lot of people probably think there's like some trick or like, oh, then he's going to send me 1,000 text messages trying to get me to buy something. I don't. I genuinely want to help as many SDRs as possible. It's a big part of my mission. Look, here, you want to hear the long game? I'll tell you my entire strategy right here. You're going to text me asking a question. I'm going to answer that question. You're going to go, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I listened to that podcast and I got his number. This is great. And then you're going to become the VP of sales in 3 years. And then you're going to call me. And then I got something to sell you.
That's the dream right there. That's the long con where you get someone to text you, you give them advice, you help them make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then they pay you back by hiring you and your company at some point in the distant future. Perfect. It's like the Italian job.
It's next level. Yeah, it's exactly right. Exactly right.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thanks again for popping on. Really appreciate it. Be on the lookout for another episode of 5 Questions with Demand Drive. And until next time, see you everyone. Have a good time.
Have a good one.
Bye.